So tonight was the beginning of the overseas European tour before Clash in Paris for WWE. Tonight Smackdown was in Dublin, Ireland. And one thing I will say before we get started with this whole video and this whole review was the fact of these international crowds. They have a habit of making these shows feel a little less lifeless than they actually are, because if you put this show anywhere in the United States, typically in the South or whatever the case is, these shows kind of feel a little lifeless because the crowd just isn't really into what's going on here. I mean, for tonight's sake, you had people who actually give a fuck about The Miz, which, kind of surprised me. But regardless, these shows tend to be a little less lifeless when you have such a hot crowd. And, this is just like the beginning for the crowds overseas, because next week they're going to be in France, so on and so forth for Clash in Paris. But tonight we kicked off the show with Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch obviously being hometown native, hometown girl from Dublin, Ireland. One thing I will say that irks the shit out of me, and it's been happening recently a lot in WWE, is the fact of now the brand split really doesn't seem to fucking matter, because they even poked fun at it here later on in the segment with Tiffany. But Becky Lynch isn't even a SmackDown, like, she's not a SmackDown star. She doesn't go on this show. Why is she here? I know you could say, well, she's from Dublin, she's from Ireland, it kind of makes sense to have her there, but like, it just will always irk the shit out of me. It happened a few weeks ago with Sammy as well when they were in Montreal. It's almost like they kind of want like a cheap pop, so to speak, so they just shill out the hometown wrestler, the hometown star out there to get a cheap pop. But regardless, we had Becky Lynch out there, then we had Tiffany interrupt her, and then we had Nia Jax. Once again, Nia Jax getting involved with Tiffany Stratton, as if we didn't see that enough this year. And then we had Jade Cargill out there. So all four women were out there, and I feel like I'm having deja vu, because I feel like this is literally how we begin every episode of SmackDown, where there is a segment to eventually get a tag team match me out of this for the main event. And lo and behold, that's what happened, because Nick Aldis came out here and made this match official, a tag team match for the main event. But really, what was the highlight of this show, at least in my opinion, was the John Cena Logan Paul in-ring segment, because we had John Cena come out there to address Logan Paul. Before he could even say anything into the microphone, Logan Paul came out, interrupted him, and essentially, called him out, calls him a corporate pawn, says that whenever, the higher powers tell Cena to, roll over, he does so. He calls John Cena an imposter, and then Cena eventually claps back at Logan Paul, saying that he isn't an outsider, he's a disappointment. He goes outside and, highlights the little Prime section that they have with the Prime bottles around ringside, and says that, essentially Logan Paul uses everybody here for his own, branding. And then Cena calls Logan Paul out on his bullshit, calls him a parasite, and says that instead of Cena facing Logan Paul this year, he could have faced somebody like an AJ Styles, like Dom Mysterio, like the Usos, like Jacob Fatu, Seth Rollins, etc. And essentially people feel like Logan Paul is a waste for John Cena as one of his final opponents. Now, I think there is some sort of truth behind that. Obviously, Logan Paul, despite what you may think of him as a person in general, in ring, you can't deny that he has what it takes. But there is some truth to what Cena said, because, and I think even Cena believes this to somewhat of an extent, because I do believe that maybe in his retirement year, he would have wanted to face somebody like a Styles, somebody like a Dom Mysterio, like Fatu, so he can give back to those new and younger names. And I know AJ really isn't a younger name per se, but I do believe that somewhere deep inside, John Cena would have loved an opportunity once again to have one of his final matches with AJ Styles. And eventually, Cena ends off the promo here with delivering an attitude adjustment to Logan Paul. Again, I kind of wondered after this promo, I said, dude, that heel turn did Cena no favors at all, because during that heel turn, sure, he had some good promos, but you never really felt he was being genuine in which he came from, right? He kind of just put on an act. But with this promo, you kind of felt like he was actually being genuine, and it came from the heart. And I feel like this is only tapping the surface as far as John Cena and his retirement run. And I feel like that heel turn really did him no favors at all. And then in the back, we get a segment between Drew McIntyre and Logan Paul, where Drew McIntyre essentially tells Logan Paul to get his heat back, so to speak, before the night is over on John Cena. And I might as well mention this at the end because we did have that main event match, the main event women's tag team match. It really wasn't nothing special. Tiffany and Jade got the win, and they started rolling the credits like 4 minutes before the actual show was slotted to end. And I said, really, this is how the show's going to end this quickly? And then eventually we see John Cena in the back, coming out of his locker room, I think leaving for the rest of the night. And Nick Aldis runs up to him and tells him, hey, I got some news regarding Brock Lesnar. I just got off the phone with him. Before Nick Aldis could deliver this news to John Cena, Logan Paul sucker punches Cena. Doesn't even connect really, to be honest, but Logan Paul sucker punches Cena and lays him out and runs off, and we are sort of left with a cliffhanger of what is going to happen with Brock Lesnar and John Cena. Now, we did hear that WrestlePalooza show was advertised and is slated to take place September 20th. I would assume that's the safe date, although I don't know if it's not that, then where specifically could that take place? It's not going to take place at Survivor Series, I wouldn't believe. It's not going to take place at the end of the year, I wouldn't believe. So that kind of rules out the question. I think it's probably going to take place there, or at the very least we may see Brock potentially make an appearance next week. Who fucking knows, man? Who fucking knows? But I do know that they're going to tease that going forward because they obviously left it at a cliffhanger here tonight. Drew McIntyre also addressed Cody Rhodes as far as, the attack, because a lot of people are wondering what Cody's status is, kayfabe wise, what Cody's status is, because they haven't mentioned anything at all. Obviously, the real reason is Cody's going off to film the Street Fighter movie, but Randy Orton made his return here and RKO'd Drew McIntyre. So it seems like for the most part, maybe they may announce Clash in Paris, Randy Orton against Drew McIntyre once again. I could definitely see that happening at the very least before Cody Rhodes makes his return and we get this match made official, possibly again, like I said, at that WrestlePalooza show. And one last thing I want to mention was, obviously I mentioned before, The Miz and Mello, they had a match here against the Motor City Machine Guns, in which they were obviously teasing major tension between Miz and Mello. The crowd here was really in the favor of Miz, really backing Miz. I do believe eventually, though, like I said, they have to do something better with Mello and, get him rid of this Miz vortex. Because Mello, when you really take a look at Mello in ring and Mello as a character, Mello has the potential to be one of the breakout stars here in this company, man. And I just feel like they're kind of wasting him. But post your comments down below. Let me know what you thought of this Dublin edition of Smackdown overseas here tonight for Friday night. Let me know what you thought down below. And until next time, I will see all of you on the next one.